Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, Theresa May has stepped out on the world stage at the G20 in Changzhou in China. It's her first big international conference as Prime Minister and an opportunity to tell other world leaders what Britain's intentions are in the aftermath of the EU referendum. Let's talk to our correspondent in Hangzhou, Robin Brandt. Robin, let's get some reaction in terms of the other world leaders, because Barack Obama looked somewhat glum and seemed to sort of repeat his mantra about the UK perhaps going to the back of the queue in terms of trade deals. And there have also been warnings from Japan.
Yeah, Barack Obama, for the record, in the final months of his presidency, warned again about the adverse effects that the UK's decision to leave the EU may have on its trading relationship with the United States. As you said, he reminded Theresa May that it will be the back of the queue in terms of any potential UK-US free trade negotiation behind the EU and behind America's Asian Pacific partners. So, that wasn't a ray of light, really, for her, was it? And today, the Japanese kind of adding to that substantial 15-page document from their Ministry of Foreign Affairs yesterday, which painted a very bleak picture of what some sizable Japanese corporations may do in deciding to leave the UK if it leaves the European Union at the same time as not having any access to the single market. There was a bit of a brush by, we're told, a very brief moment between Shinzo Abe, Japan's Prime Minister, and Theresa May today. And according to The Sun's eminent political editor, Tom Newton-Dunn, Shinzo Abe pushed her yet again on for more detail for what Brexit will mean for Japanese firms. So she's under pressure here to give detail, but of course we know she can't really, because she herself doesn't really know. Except, of course, on the issue of immigration, where she has been a little clearer in terms of rejecting the idea of a points-based system. And in fact, one of her spokespeople at Number 10 has actually ruled it out. Well, she's been clearer, Joe, in saying what she doesn't want, but this is not an affirmative announcement about what the Prime Minister, 10 weeks after the vote, thinks she may want her government to even seek to achieve in negotiating its exit from the European Union. I mean, you're right, she told journalists accompanying her on the trip out here that the Australian points-based system was not a silver bullet, and then her official spokeswoman kind of went further and said it is not an option. And I think adding as well that there was full cabinet support for that. So perhaps Boris Johnson, Foreign Secretary now, very prominent campaigner to leave the EU, of course, has rowed back somewhat on his support for that during the campaign. Robin Brandt there at the G20 conference in Hangzhou. Well, let's pick up now on Theresa May's comments about what kind of immigration system the UK should have after we have left the EU. During the referendum campaign, Vote Leave said that the UK should introduce an Australian-style points-based immigration system, which would end the automatic right of all EU citizens to come to live and work in the UK and discrimination against non-EU countries. The Australian system awards economic migrants points for their personal attributes, including age and qualifications and their occupational status. Unless you are sponsored by an employer, you must reach a certain number of points to be granted a visa. Migrants are also subject to medical checks and a character test. Now, in recent years, Australia has encouraged skilled migrants to apply and has increased the number of places available in its migration programme to 190,000. In 2008, the Labour government introduced a similar system for skilled migrants and students coming to the UK from outside the European Union. But Theresa May yesterday cast doubt over whether a points-based system would work for the UK. She said there is no single silver bullet in terms of dealing with immigration. And this morning, a Number 10 spokesman has ruled it out, saying, as the Prime Minister has said many times in the past, a points-based system will not work and is not an option. Well, we're joined now by Madeleine Sumption from the Oxford Migration Observatory. Welcome to the programme. But first of all, to you, Theresa Villiers, do you feel betrayed by the fact that the system that you campaigned on in terms of reducing numbers coming into the UK has now been rejected by the Prime Minister?
No, I don't, because I think there are a range of ways to implement the Brexit vote. I think what is clear is that people in this country voting to leave, wanting to regain control over making our own laws in this country, and that includes regaining control of the immigration system and introducing a system which does two things. It enables the people we elect in this country to control the overall numbers, and also gives us in this country the right to reject individuals. So it marks an end to free-for-all, open-door immigration from the rest of the EU. You can do that with a point system, or you can do that with other systems, or you can do it with a combination of a work permit and a point system.
But why did you...
different ways to do it.
Why did you believe a points-based system? Why did Vote Leave believe that system would be the most successful way of reducing numbers?
Well, I think it would work well, but I'm not going to sit here and say that you couldn't achieve as good a result using a work permit system. The important thing is that it is implemented effectively, it's rigorously enforced, and it brings down the numbers.
Do you agree with Theresa Villiers on that?
I mean, during the campaign, it was actually always slightly unclear what aspect of the Australian-style points-based system was being proposed. When people talk about point systems, they're often talking about a system that would allow people to come in without a job offer, based on their characteristics like their education or language ability and so forth. So that was actually a slightly surprising choice for a country that is trying to reduce levels of immigration.
Because you don't think it would have reduced levels of immigration, because it certainly hasn't seemed to have done under our current points-based system, does it? If you can come without a job offer, as long as you, satisfy the measures or requirements, you can still come in.
There are, in theory, ways of designing a points-based system that would restrict immigration, but a work permit system can do that as well. So I think I would agree that in some ways what's more important is how you design the system of criteria of who gets to come in and based on what skills, rather than whether it's a point-based system or whether it's a work permit system.
So why do you think Theresa May has come out so strongly against the points-based system?
Well, the points-based systems have had some problems in countries where they've been implemented. One of the issues that comes up is if people come in without a job offer, then there's no guarantee, even if they have relatively high levels of education, there's no guarantee that they're actually going to be able to get a job. And that's been a problem that has been experienced in some countries that have used these systems, and also in the UK, which had a similar system, but under the last government.
So do you accept it was a flawed system? It wouldn't have actually achieved what you and your colleagues wanted, which was to dramatically reduce immigration numbers?
Well, what we always said is that we're not looking to cut and paste exactly the same system as they use in Australia and use it here. But the reality is we can take the strong points, the strong elements of point systems, such as the ones they use in Australia, or look to other countries as well. As I say, the crucial thing is control over the overall numbers and being able to refuse entry to people if we deem that to be appropriate.
Are you worried, though, just before I bring you in, Chuka, are you worried that Theresa May is going soft, if you like, on the issue of immigration so soon after the Brexit vote, and that she will not deliver the reduced numbers that you wanted to see?
I really don't believe that she's going soft on immigration. I think this is absolutely central to what she wants to do. I think it was pretty central to what she wanted to do even before the Brexit vote.
Except, of course, she failed at every single point to bring down net migration to the tens of thousands that was introduced as a policy by David Cameron.
But one of the reasons why she couldn't do that was because of our EU membership, and it becomes pretty much impossible to meet that commitment in our manifesto while we retain free movement in its current form.
Although the points-based system for non-EU migrants also didn't dramatically or consistently reduce the numbers of non-EU migrants either, did it?
But it depends how you design a point system. You can design it to reduce numbers if you wish to.
Right, and isn't that the point? It doesn't actually matter which system is introduced as long as the numbers are reduced, whether it's points-based or whether it is work permit and visa-based, or you have to have a job offer, firm job offer from an employer. If it reduces the numbers, she will be fulfilling what people voted for when they voted to leave the EU.
Let's be clear what people voted for, right? People like Theresa went around the country saying £350 million extra a week for the NHS if you vote to leave the EU. Nothing indicated by the Prime Minister that's going to happen. They said no VAT on fuel. Nothing from the Prime Minister on that. They said that you would get your Australian points-based system. She's just saying it's not going to happen. So that's three broken promises
but
already.
I've just started the question, does it matter about the Australian points system if the numbers are reduced?
That if we leave the European Union, we can have this Australian points-based system and it will solve all our problems. Now, I never denied that immigration poses challenges for us, not just economically, but just in terms of the cultural makeup of all of our different communities, but never went around pretending that somehow this Australian points-based system was going to be the silver bullet that would sort out all our problems. They did, and now the chickens are coming home to roost. And I was so puzzled by this. It wasn't like they were not told about this beforehand. On the Home Affairs Select Committee...
Who's they, by the way?
the different Vote Leave campaigners,
Right.
Boris Johnson, Chris Grayling, Priti Patel, Theresa and all the rest, went around talking about this as if it was a magic solution. When you speak to anyone, like your guest here today, very clear that that isn't actually what that system does. What they actually have done in Australia is almost used it to promote immigration. 28% of people in Australia were born out of the country. That's double the percentage of our own country.
But we don't have to have the same system, do we, as Australia? But hang on a second.
This is what they were promoting.
Because this is a tirade. This is a bit of a tirade. But can I just go back to the key point?
as the solution to all our problems, and it's shown today.
But when you
that
say
it's not.
it was the solution to all our problems, what Theresa
I
May
didn't say
has
that.
taken,
They did.
what Theresa May has said is that she has heard loud and clear that voters want to reduce the numbers. She didn't say by any specific system she wants to reduce the numbers. Now, it may be that the point system was not the way to do it, but do you agree that there needs to be a way to reduce numbers of immigrants coming into the country?
I think we need to look at numbers. I've never denied that.
Right.
But we also have to have a debate about what happens when people come to our country. How do we integrate them? We have actually, I chair the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Social Integration. We have got the High Commissioner from Australia coming in today to talk to us about this Australian points-based system. But we've got to have both those debates. But there's an opportunity here for the Prime Minister, because part of the reason I thought, we've got to stay in the European Union is because membership of the single market is vital, absolutely vital. And of course...
Well, hang on, membership of the single market, as Theresa May herself has said, she's not going to sign up to if it means freedom of movement. And isn't the point of the vote, rightly or wrongly, that freedom of movement ends? That is. Do you accept that?
As we know it.
No, but do you accept that freedom of movement has to end?
That freedom of movement, as we know it, the public, the people have spoken on that issue. But
and you accept it?
Yeah, I accept what they have said. But this is the opportunity for her, because the circle that she's got to square is that we want the fullest access to the single market possible. I don't think she should just go, I can't do that. I think she should aim for that. And what she possibly could also do is get our European partners to change the way that free movement operates in the European Union. In essence, ending free movement as we know it. Because it isn't as if they haven't got the same issue and argument.
There doesn't seem to be any indication of actually changing fundamentally freedom of movement, not from any of the European leaders that I've heard.
But Joe, those European leaders, François Hollande is likely to go up against Marine Le Pen. She's going to make free movement the issue in that general election in France.
She will. And
in Germany, it's going to happen. In Italy, it will happen in 2018. So that's her opportunity. She should be ambitious. She didn't just say, we can't be part of the single market.
You've accepted that freedom of movement must end. That's what people voted for.
As we know it.
So, Madeleine Sumption, in terms of the system that you could bring in, what would deliver radically reduced numbers of immigrants coming into the UK? Would it be a visa or a work permit system?
Well, the most common system for controlling work-related immigration is a work permit. Essentially, that enables employers to put in an application to bring a particular person to fill a particular job, and then the government will set the criteria. So, say you can only bring people in if the skill level is, if the skills that they have meet a certain threshold, or if the job meets various different criteria. You can make that system more or less restrictive, and that will affect the numbers of people who would be able to come into the country under it.
And you would accept that?
That there are, you can effectively meet the problems and deal with this issue using a work permit system. Yes, that's a legitimate system to use.
To tens of thousands in terms of net migration?
It would be possible to deliver that immigration target, I believe, but it will. Changes to free movement are not going to deliver that target on their own. We also need to press ahead the reforms that we're making to non-EU migration as well.
Right. So do you think a work visa system would deliver net migration down to tens of thousands, or is that just an unachievable target?
A work permit system for EU citizens on its own cannot deliver the tens of thousands because there is also quite a lot of non-EU immigration. So at the moment it's quite difficult to see what combination of policies would deliver that, but it's
so you see it's undeliverable, really, looking at it as it is now?
It depends on the economic circumstances. A lot of it's not just about immigration policy. Other things will also affect the numbers.
That's right. And of course, we always said during the campaign, this isn't just about, as you say, EU immigrants. I mean, if you just took non-EU immigrants, you would not be hitting this tens of thousands target. I mean, I think there is genuinely, we need a proper national debate about this. British Future, the think tank, have called for that. I think it's right. This target, I think, is damaging. I think we should have in mind a number. But if you have a target...
What number would you have in mind?
Look, I don't pretend to know the answer to that question. But the problem is you've got a target at the moment, Joe, that every single year the government is failing to meet. And that completely undermines trust in the public.
But without freedom of movement, they will get closer, they would argue. Well, but can I just ask Theresa Villiers, should there be an inbuilt bias towards EU migrants? We're still closely linked to European neighbours geographically, and to some extent there was a difference between non-EU and EU migrants in the system. Should there be an inbuilt bias towards EU migrants?
Well, I mean, at the moment we have a massively unbalanced system in that EU migrants can come in whatever circumstances, but we have significant restrictions on non-EU migrants. And levelling out that to some degree, I think, is going to be important. I think it's, you know, in terms of the compromises we might have to make in relation to the negotiations that are coming up, it wouldn't be completely illegitimate to give a degree of preference for EU nationals as long as we retain control over the overall numbers and we retain the right to refuse individuals if we don't think it's appropriate for them to be allowed to live and work in this country.
And it's worth paying the price of tariff-free access to the single market to ensure those numbers come down dramatically.
I think it's certainly, we'll obviously have to make some compromises on this. I don't think we need to move to a system where we treat EU migrants exactly the same as migrants from the rest of the world.
So
but it's clear that we do need a system which ends the free-for-all that we have at the moment and enables us to control the overall numbers. But that's interesting because that does leave wriggle room.
Well, it was interesting actually what Theresa just said something just completely surprised me, which is that you seem to be suggesting that you'd like to see the percentage of immigrants net coming in from the EU to be higher, because at the moment it's 50-50. Roughly half of the net immigration we have comes from outside the EU and half comes from in the EU, and you seem to be suggesting that you want slightly more as a percentage to be coming from the EU, which I think is interesting.
I think the importance is that we get immigration down to sustainable levels and we respect the result of the referendum.
Yeah, I think we can agree on respecting the result.
Madeleine Sumption, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I've been getting away with it all my